Esteemed Minister Dimitrovsky, Excellencies, distinguished representatives of the Diplomatic Corps, dear friends, guests, students, media representatives. It is a great honor and privilege on behalf of the organizers of today's conference, the Diplomatic Club Skopje and the University American College Skopje, as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade that supported us, to extend a warm welcome to each of you. Your presence underscores our shared commitment to dialogue, cooperation, and the continuous pursuit of peace and stability in the contemporary complex global landscape. At the outset, I want to highlight that 2025 year is a significant for both the Diplomatic Club and the University American College, and this conference is part of our activities dedicated to marking several anniversaries. Let me start with the upcoming 29th of April, the Day of Macedonian Diplomacy. 56 years ago, on this date, the first Macedonian Foreign Affairs Bureau was established. This anniversary not only highlights institutional longevity, but also serves as a significant recognition of the journey, persistence, and vision that have contributed to development, diplomatic identity, and strength of today's Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. On this occasion, the Diplomatic Club honors the generation of diplomats, both past and present, who have worked hard to promote, achieve, and safeguard the strategic goals and interests of our country's foreign policy with dignity and wisdom. The 20th anniversary of the University American College. I extend my sincere congratulations to Rector Boyadjiev and his team for their valuable work and results achieved in the past 2 decades. The 50th anniversary of the Diplomatic Club. While 15 years may appear brief in history, for those who comprehend the nuances and challenges inherent in diplomacy, we recognize that this milestone is of great importance. It reflects the continuity and dedication of individuals who have nurtured the club with vision and purpose, establishing it as a platform for dialogue and exchange of ideas on numerous foreign policy and international relations themes. And the 10th anniversary of the club's specialized publication, Diplomatic Review. Over the past decade, this publication has evolved into more than a simple source of information. It has established itself as a respected outlet for critical reflection, thoughtful analysis, and a chronicle of events that shape our nation and global environment. More importantly, it has addressed the principles, debates, and philosophies that underpin the practice of diplomacy itself. I express my deepest appreciation to all those members of the club and editorial board of the publication who have contributed to this significant legacy. Now I turn to today's theme of enduring relevance and strategic importance, the geographical location of a country as a key factor in its foreign policy and national security decision-making. Geography encompasses far more than a collection of physical contours on a map. It significantly influences bilateral and multilateral relations, security concerns, economic interests, and cultural ties. This relevance is even more pronounced in the current international environment, marked by the war in Ukraine, regional conflicts, shifting power dynamics, and ongoing transnational threats. For example, the geographical positions of Sweden and Finland, 2 countries with long military neutrality, have influenced their recent decision to join the NATO alliance. Historical and potentially future territorial disputes resulting in the creation of new states, establishment of new borders, or even the dissolution of states has often arisen from geographical considerations. Even in an era of digital interconnectivity and advanced technologies, where biological weapons, drones, satellites, cyber attacks, and especially artificial intelligence can mitigate natural barriers, geography will persist in shaping geopolitical strategies. Thus, an understanding of geography can assist nations in anticipating challenges, avoiding conflicts, and making well-informed decisions regarding their foreign policy and alliances. This understanding is particularly relevant for North Macedonia. Its strategically significant geographic location, combined with the fact that it is a landlocked country bordered by 5 neighbors, each with unique political dynamics and tense historical relationships, directly influences its foreign policy and national security priorities. The geographical realities of North Macedonia not only stress the necessity for stable and cooperative relations with its neighbors, but also highlight its aspirations for integration in the political security and economic alliances, mainly NATO, a goal achieved, and the European Union, an accession process in stalemate due to external and internal reasons. Today's conference is an excellent opportunity to hear the analytical perspectives of prominent diplomats and academics regarding the practical and theoretical aspects of geography and geopolitics as they relate to the far-reaching foreign policy and national security decisions. I wish you all fruitful and substantial discussions, and thank you. Allow me now to pass the floor to Rector of the American University and Professor Dr. Boyagia. Please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Krivsky. Dear Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade Dimitrovsky, Ambassador, Excellencies, dear guests, dear friends. Welcome to this panel, and at the beginning I'd like to congratulate for the organizers, our Dean Ivan Dudovsky, and members of the Diplomatic Club. I will start with a small word of wisdom for Deputy Minister. I didn't know that this is the jubilee year for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but if you want to use the combined wisdom of every ambassador, I met once by chance the members of the Diplomatic Club who meet once a month at the restaurant Gino and have very good talks. So it is fantastic free advisory board you can always use, and I believe that all these ambassadors have this joint wisdom which can be fruitful for our country. What to say, we are very proud to the university that we also celebrate 20 years jubilee from the start of operations in 2005. And this is something what I believe differentiates us with many others. We strongly believe in the relevance for the community. We strongly believe in relevance for the society. And this is part of our, let's say, outreach efforts, which extend beyond the current talk or research, teach and research programs at the university. So this topic, unfortunately, has become very important in the last 3 years. Security is here, the last word, but I think in this sentence for the organizing, but I think it's the most important issue. In this sense, this is the continuation of a few other programs we had at the university. One was with the Visegrad Group members, and it was called reinforcement of the NATO eastern flank. And we had guests from Poland, Slovakia, Czech, Romania, Bulgaria, Hungary. Panel. Then we had one panel which was very interesting, and it was intertwined security issues between EU and NATO, and this is the third one. We are very happy to have guests from Corvinus University. We hope to establish collaboration in the future with them. We have traditionally had relations with Hungary, mostly with Zetoš Laurent, and of course we are very happy to have a guest from Catholic University, Católica de Sacra Cuore. From the last year we are running a double degree program in political science, and I hope that this is a good step in that direction. Thank you very much to everyone, and I wish the panelists to have a fruitful debate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Georgiev, and I'm very confident that the work and the results of the University American College in the next 20 years will be as well as positive as in the past. Thank you. Now I have the honor to pass the floor to the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Mr. Zoran Dimitrovski.
Thank you. Dear Ambassador Tegovski, President of the Diplomatic Club, ladies and gentlemen, dear members of academia, it is my honor on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade to address the distinguished forum of the Diplomatic Club. It is always a pleasure to talk to senior diplomats and members of the Academy. The topic that you are going to explore today, the importance of geography in shaping the foreign policy and national security, has been so far unjustifiably marginalized in foreign policy discussions, at least in Europe. The reason may be the decades-long peace on the European continent. However, the recent geopolitical developments brought the topic up to the front to any serious analysis necessary for crafting the foreign policy and national security. As you may witness today, the geopolitical environment is suffering dramatic change, and as it has always been throughout the history of mankind, the fight for land, reach of natural wealth, is determining the current geopolitics. This has been perpetuated exponentially with the need of development of high technologies. Unfortunately, the war is a second nature of humanity. History is teaching us that wars are fought for the wealth a certain land may contain and for the roots that its mountains, valleys, deserts can enable smooth trade, meaning ports, rivers, roads, and railway corridors that will give the advantage and trade dominance of the force that is in control of it. The land rich of rare minerals in Donbas, Ukraine, diamonds and golden mines in some African countries, the oil in the Middle East are among the boldest examples of this claim. Dear friends, the geographical position of North Macedonia on the European continent, in the heart of Balkans, has several foreign policy and security repercussions. On the positive note, we are lucky to be located in the continent where the European Union exists, an association without precedence in the human history as far as economic development, human rights, high standards of living are concerned. Some distant countries on the African and Asian continent do not have such an opportunity to become members of the European Union and enjoy its benefits. However, on the negative note, Balkans, like Middle East and Caucasus, have always been regions where different ethnic and religious civilizations clash and wars break out. These are territories where routes of the famous Silk Road and gas and oil pipelines in the present from Asia to Europe intertwine. Wars in Balkan countries and over Macedonia were not an incident, on the contrary. As you are aware, there were bloody wars in Balkans recently during the 90s, and although they were labeled as civil wars that broke out due to the interethnic hatred in the countries of former Yugoslavia, the geography and geopolitics played its major role. Of course, there will always be an excuse for casus belli, the ethnic minority whose rights have not been properly honored, the lunatic dictator, the imperialist nature of one's regime, the humanitarian intervention. So therefore, the urgent integration of Western Balkans in European Union is rather a security issue of Europe, especially in the light of new military alliances among some Balkan countries and European Union member states. The recent examples have shown that alliances of Western Balkan countries in which all of them do not participate are not working well, last being the Open Balkans initiative. But Berlin process, for that matter, with all of the 6 Western Balkan countries participating, is working. It is therefore of crucial importance that NATO, European Union, and the United States take note of this rather worrying security development and act accordingly. From the security point of view, North Macedonia is pretty much dependent on our strategic partnership with the United States, which is a dominant peacekeeping power in the region. However, we should take advantage of this strategic partnership in economic, infrastructure, and energy development as well. North Macedonia, as it has been mentioned, is a landlocked country with high mountains. Luckily, there is enough fertile soil, lots of sunny days, which are essential for production of agricultural food, but also for production of energy from photovoltaics, and there are also enough sources of drinking water. By exploiting these geographical opportunities and attracting investment, this government is working hard that in the next several years we should become an energy self-sufficient country and to enhance the production of food. Unfortunately, Macedonia is not rich with mineral resources, but still the possibilities of digging copper and gold in the mountains of the southeastern part of the country, which has been blocked due to suspicious environmental issues, is not negligible. In addition, the Vardar Valley is a transport corridor that is crucial for connection of the Mediterranean Sea with Europe. For the most of its trade, North Macedonia is dependent on the ports in the neighboring Greece, Albania, and Bulgaria, and on the roads and railways to Upper Europe. Our economic development pretty much depends on the development and modernization of corridors 10 and 8. This geography affects enormously the foreign policy of the government and prioritizes the construction of fast railway track that will connect the port of Thessaloniki to Budapest, i.e. to Europe to Mediterranean, but also the construction of the railway track to Bulgaria, which is essential from the point of view of security, the movement of NATO forces from Black Sea to the Adriatic and vice versa. It may be an exaggeration to say that North Macedonia could also become an energetic hub as far as gas and oil pipelines from Asia to Europe are concerned, and energy and transport corridors for that matter. But nonetheless, the hard work should be put to achieve this goal. Dear friends and colleagues, we live in a geopolitical turmoil, and it is very important that we use the geography of Macedonia in shaping the foreign policy for the benefit of our citizens. I'm looking forward to your ideas, and I wish you a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Dimitrovsky, for your really inspiring address. And I would like now to invite the panelists and the moderator of the first session to take the floor.
Okay, a warm welcome from me as well. We are very pleased to organize this conference in collaboration with the Diplomatic Club in Skopje and in cooperation with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade of North Macedonia. My name is Ivan Dodovsky. I teach at University American College Skopje, and I have the privilege to moderate this first session today. We are really honored to have with us three excellent experts. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Professor Dr. Riccardo Redaelli, Professor of Geopolitics at University Cattolica in Milan, Italy. We are very pleased to collaborate with this university. As you have heard already, we have a double degree program agreement allowing our students to study for 2 years in Skopje and 1 year in Milan and get diplomas from both universities. Some of these students or potential students who will go to Milan are with us here. I'm very pleased to have them here, and I welcome them as well. Then we have Ms. Sanja Zogradska, Special Advisor and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. We are very pleased to have her here. She's a great expert on the topic, and I'm sure she will contribute with her perspective on the topic. And also, we are especially honored to have the esteemed Professor Nikola Dujovsky from the Faculty of Security Skopje, which is part of the University St. Clement Ochridsky in Bitola. Without further ado, Professor Redele, I would like to ask you to start just a kind suggestion that each of you has 15 minutes, and I'll give you a signal when time approaches so that we respect the time. As agreed, at the end of all three presentations, we'll have a question and answer session. So people from the audience will have the chance to ask questions and give comments. Thank you.
So thanks for the invitation. I just cut short the thanking because yeah, the ice cream is perfect. I will cut short the thanking to the University American College and to the Diplomatic Club. It's a pleasure being here, and also to strengthen our collaboration between the Catholic University of Milan and University American College. So I have 15 minutes. You know, generally, professor takes 40 minutes just to say, I will be brief. So, as you can see, probably, I don't know if we can. Yes, thanks. From the title, it takes 5 minutes just to understand what is the meaning. But basically, is that geography is about power. From a geopolitical point of view, in geoeconomic point of view, geography does not exist per se. I'm sorry we have a professor of geography, so I'm sure he will not agree with me. But that is the reality. We assume that geography is innocent, that you have the mountains, the lakes, the sea, but it's not. It's not. Geography is not a product of nature, but is a product of history of struggle between different entities in order to having competing authorities, to have the possibility to organize, occupy, and administer space. And that, since you are from North Macedonia, you understand very well what does it mean. And the word geography require a minute of my 50 minutes of analysis. It's not just geography, is the concept of human geography. Is a more comprehensive concept. Is the power who shape what is perceived human geography, not only physical geography. And I will focus a bit about the complex relation between geography, power, and technology. Geopolitics has been the first approach in the classical period to analyze this strategic triangle relation between geography, power, and technology. And you know, geographic space is generally considered the field for interaction between technology and politics. But they always change. They always have been affected by changement. But geography is the more stable one, or at least we think that geography is the most stable one. But since geography is about power, power changes affected our perception of geography as well. And especially when we enter in the nuclear era, we saw a change in those strategic triangular relations, those triad. And it's very true in the current period. The faster technology it is, the faster the technological change it is, and the more complex is understanding relation between power and geography. And also because triangular relations are extremely complex, because I told that power influence geography, but power shape geography. But at the same time, it's very true also that geography influence power. Some of the geopolitical theories, they were saying that in some way you are prisoners. Power is prisoner of its own geography. And also it's true, despite the fact that seems a contradiction of what I told just behind. But technology alter the mutual relation between geography and power. So if you want to frame a comprehensive foreign policy, comprehensive security policy, you have to take into consideration all the element of this triangle, strategic triangle: technology, power, and geography. And that's, is geometrical increase in complexity. I'm the pleasure of being old is that I could remember the old good time when there was the Cold War. Being a geopolitical analyst during the Cold War was so easy. There were just two teams. Either you were belonging
To the ones we were with the good ones, the others with the bad one. Is not even a dark analyst who could play. And nowadays, it's like a soccer game with 20 teams playing at the same time. Who is winning? Who is losing? Who is getting the upper hand? It's difficult to understand. And that's why it's important that at politically and technical diplomatic level is important to understand the systemic structural dynamics from the epiphenomena. Not an easy task, but it's an incredibly important one. Because if you focus on the wrong one, that you can easily take the east side of foreign relations. And it's also important to understand what level the pervasiveness of underlying geopolitical forces and the connection between territory, history, culture, and strategic choice. Uh, uh, I think I should not emphasize to you who still were dealing with all those problematic and comprehensive relations. History, culture, and strategic charts are fundamental, especially when you live in a territory with intertwined identities. But we, that I have no time just to remember some of the classical and post-classical theories. There is the Admiral Alfred Mahan, the influence of sea power upon history. I just mentioned Macedonia might not be interested in the sea power and would be a state because you relied a lot on a sea power a lot, and you should understand which are the mechanisms. United States, even nowadays, is a truly neo-Mahanian military power, and that's important for you to realize. Uh, a less no classical version is Sir Julian Corbett. Since he was a British professor, not an American admiral, is less famous for the American were focusing just on the American sticker. But Julian Corbett is an exceptional uh, analyst. He wrote Principle of Maritime Strategy, but he emphasized that maritime strategy is always part of a general strategy. It emphasizes something which is, I think, very
important, uh, uh, even for your country, the strategy of peace, which is not a pacifist strategy, but the importance to have the strategy during peaceful time is you build up your security policy when you have no troubles, when you have worries. That is important to understand. Then Sir Arthur Mackinder, that's the most famous one, the ones who theorized the idea of heartland, which is more related also to the idea, to the land power and the difficulties of land power. And then the last one is more for the students. If you want to understand contemporary geopolitics, you
have to look to the basis of the theory. Also because geopolitics is considered a branch of international relation, but it's not only that. Because geopolitics
should always move from the knowledge of historical identity and cultural consideration. You cannot build up any geopolitical thought without starting from the real understanding of the story, the history of a region, the history of a country. So at the last, I have still almost 5 minutes. That's some final analysis. Maintenance of geographic features, geographic characteristic, means the preservation of foreign policy interest. What that it means? That if you have a persistent of geographic characteristics, I'm not speaking about physical geographic, but cultural, political geography, a geography shaped by power relation, then you have a preservation of foreign political interest, of foreign policy interest. In the Balkans, it's difficult to envisage the real power dynamics, but when you understand them, you know how to deal with them in the long-term strategy. And then we have a fundamental law of geopolitics. If you have a land power, you're focused on achieving the strategy unity of space. That's all the characteristic. Things to Russia might be the Tsarist empire, Soviet Union, contemporary Russia. What Russia needs, being the heartland, is achieving the strategic unity of space in order to compact the Euro-Asian platform. Thanks to China nowadays, via the Belt and Road Initiative, via the huge plan of infrastructures, you try to compact and solidify the space. If you are the sea power, you're focusing on control the maritime sea route, and you don't need to solidify the space. Better, traditionally, maritime sea power preferred to have a fragmentation of the continental Eurasian platform. So that's why the United States can have political military alliance even in a fragmented space, because it's functional is pivotal for their policy. But if you are a continental country, if you are a continental power, you need to solidify the space. And this is important, especially for your country, because from a theoretical point of view, from classical geopolitics, the landlocked states, like North Macedonia are the least favorable geopolitical position in geopolitics. The Americans say the more the merrier. With neighbors, the less the merrier. So that's the reality. But then you should understand, that's, UK is because they have just the penguins to take. Frontiers represent what? represent a geographic political description of balance of power in an existing period of time. What is important for a small landlocked country is not to focus on the balance of power in the existing period of time, but to think in long-term perspective, in long-term dynamics. And what is important, and just I'm concluding, yes, last few words, that the capacity to resist the pressure of other states is not based only on resources, on your domestic security policy, but your ability to build up credible alliances. And that's probably dictating your domestic and nationalist politics more than any other idea. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Dodowski. Thank you for the kind words in your introduction. However, I must say that I don't consider myself as an expert on this topic, far from that, but I would like to share my observation on it. So I'll start by greeting the Deputy Foreign Minister Dimitrovsky, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished organizers of this conference, dear students and colleagues. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for giving me the opportunity to speak on the important topic of how geography is shaping foreign policy and security policy of nations. My presentation will focus on understanding geopolitics and its impact on diplomacy. And I would like to start by sharing some personal observations of how I became aware of the important role geography plays in our perspective on the world. Maps are good visual examples of how the geographical embedment of countries matters. The Europeans are used to look at the world map with the European continent in the middle of the map. While I was posted in New York and later in Melbourne, I realized that the world maps which decorated my office walls were different. One was America-centric, while the other was an Australia-centered, and they provided different perspectives of the world. I realized what was obvious, that the physical location from which we look at the world is one of the important aspects in shaping our worldview. As a diplomat, I wanted to understand why some countries and nations thrive while others struggle, what factors contribute to their development and well-being, or their hardships and backwardness. Some of the answers to these questions I found in books and studies on geopolitics. So what is geopolitics and how is it defined? Geopolitics is a relatively new scientific discipline which started to develop at the end of the 19th century that studies the relationship between the geographical and historical factors influencing the formation and functioning of states. There is no unified definition of geopolitics since scholars studied it from different angles, how physical location, geography, national resources, but also technology in certain time periods are relevant to understand the power relations among different nations. As it investigates the interactions between political actors and their territorial surroundings, one can say that geopolitics belongs to the intersection of political geography and international relations. Dr. David Kriekmans, an associated professor at the University of Antwerp, states that in trying to understand the evolution of world politics, geopolitics has an ambition to be holistic, to connect the variables with one another. Because of the integration of several factors, the synthetic multidisciplinary approach to geopolitics is important. It studies how different fields and factors impact and interact with each other, like the location, the economic power, the manpower, technology, and other factors. It can explain how geofactors interact with international relations and how technology helps to avoid pitfalls from geographical determinism. Due to the rapid changes in world politics, growing competition among states, especially among the big powers, and power shifts, decision makers need to understand better the complexities of the contemporary international relations and be able to navigate the multiple overlapping challenges. Geopolitics provides an approach, a method for analyzing different factors that contribute to the comprehending better the changing political, economic, and security environment. That is why geopolitics matters today, although until recently it was considered a relic of the past, which belonged to the period of power politics. After 2 world wars, which left Europe devastated, the EU was created as a geopolitical construct with the intention of ending wars and power politics among the continent states. Unfortunately, the war in Ukraine, the rising militarization, the new economic fault lines, and cyber threats have increased tensions in international diplomacy and brought new challenges from which Europe was not immune. Bearing in mind the European violent past, it is even more important to study and analyze the geopolitical factors that are shaping the world today. So how is geopolitics relevant to our region and to our country? The Balkans, where North Macedonia is located, is of historical strategic significance. It is a crossroads of 3 continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. In the past, 6 foreign empires, the Persian, Roman, Byzantine, Ottoman, Habsburg, Austrian, and Russian, sought to possess it, whole or in part, with varying degrees of success. In different historical periods, this region played a different role, which depended on external factors. According to some researchers, the geopolitical and geographical position of the Balkans and the interests of the powers led to a permanent struggle for a sphere of influence in this region. There are many academic studies and texts written on geopolitics. An article with the same title by the American scholar Joseph S. Rausek analyzed the geopolitical developments that affected the region since antiquity to the end of the Second World War, and it was published in the American Journal of Economics and Sociology back in April 1946. Rausek stressed that the European international relations in the 50 years preceding the outbreak of the First World War were closely bound up with Balkan problems, the disruption of the Turkish Empire, the rise of the Balkan statehood, and the ensuing conflict of interest among the great powers. During the 19th century, the great powers in this region were competing for an access to the sea. Their conflicts of interest were focused on the control of strategic locations in this region, like the Dardanelles and the Eastern Mediterranean. As Rausek wrote, the Russian interests were to weaken the port and by that to weaken its control to the Dardanelles and the Eastern Mediterranean. The Austrians were anxious to control the Danube at its mouth and the Dardanelles as the outlet for the Danube commerce. The German Kaiser had a dream of securing a land route to Asia, the transversal Eurasian axis Berlin-Baghdad, which was planned to form a shortest land route from Hamburg to Basra between the Atlantic Ocean, that is the North Sea, and the Indian Ocean. This German policy, known as Drang nach Osten, or drive to the east or push eastward, was later also pursued by Hitler. The great powers were interested in the natural resources of the Balkan countries. Since 1933, the German economic expansion grew towards the countries of Southeastern Europe. According to some German estimations from that time, the Southeast could provide a substitute for the losses inflicted on the German economy at overseas markets because of the big economic crisis. The concept of the big economic space, or Großraumwirtschaft, was created, according to which the Balkans will have a significant place in providing raw materials or minerals like copper, zinc, chrome, lead, manganese, needed for the German military industry, as well as the agricultural products to the German economy. On the other hand, the Balkans and the Near East were seen as vast, underdeveloped, and promising territories with millions of potential buyers of German goods. During the occupation of Yugoslavia in World War II, Germans hold all the important mines, as well as on the territory of our country. The mines are the German management were the Alatini mines, Ltd. joint stock companies like U-Boat and Lojane, Jugomantan, Antimon, the German mining company Prilep and Trepča Mines Ltd. That exploited the lead and zinc mines Letovo. In the Western Balkans region, important transport hubs intersect, which for centuries have fundamental meaning for Europe and Asia. Moravsko-Vardavski, Marički, together with the direction Drač, Tirana, Skopje, Sofia, the Black Sea. The area of the Western Balkans, in effect, a historical central connecting point between Europe, the Caucasus, and the Middle East, still essential for the trade routes that link them. In the past, the famous ancient Roman Empire communication route via Ignatia was running from Durrës on the Adriatic coast through Macedonia and Egnatia, Thessaloniki to Istanbul. This route running from west to east now forms the Pan-European Corridor 8, which served as a vital trans-European transport network connecting Albania, North Macedonia, and Bulgaria from the Adriatic Sea to the Black Sea, thereby bolstering regional integration with the European Union. Now also the Pan-European Corridor 10 is the main communication route running from the north, traversing Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, Serbia, North Macedonia, and Greece, that connects the Western and Central Europe to the south to the port of Thessaloniki. This corridor enhances north-south connectivity across the Balkans, facilitating market access and fostering economic and political integration among participating countries. Both corridors, 8 and 10, will play a very important role in improving regional connectivity and economic development in the Western Balkans. But as they also expand and consolidate the region's connectivity with the European Union, have an important geopolitical and EU integration dimension. During the Second World War, the Allies studied the situation and the deployment of forces in the Balkans. In several documents, Vardar-Morava Valley was mentioned as a good corridor for Allies advancing to Central Europe. Today, this corridor is significant to NATO as well. In an analysis made by CESPI, Centro Studi Internazionale, an Italian think tank, is stated the following: the region of the Western Balkans wedges between the eastern and the southern flanks of the Atlantic Alliance, playing a key role in the overall compactness and security of the Euro-Atlantic front. All the above-mentioned facts and considerations have been instrumental in forming our foreign and security policy, in which achieving full-fledged membership in NATO and in the EU have been our priorities since the early years of the independence. Through the Euro-Atlantic integration and the alliance, we are trying to bridge the barriers and limitations to our political economic developments imposed by geography, but at the same time bring an added value to both associations with the specific contributions and experiences that emanate from our history and geography. In conclusion, let me summarize how geopolitics is impacting diplomacy. The multidisciplinary character of geopolitics offers possibilities for good analysis and risk assessment of the significant factors that influence foreign policy of states. Diplomats provide valuable input into foreign policy planning and implementation by gathering information and analysis on the political, economic, security, and technical events, as well as on the behavior of political and other relevant actors. Through geopolitical analysis, the governments can develop an operational framework for planning their needs as political entities and define the basic factors around which the planning is done, whether that is energy, security, or economic choices that need to be made, as well as evaluate geopolitical risk and interconnectedness of risks. And as mentioned earlier, geopolitics studies the relationship between geographical and historical factors, influencing the formation and functioning of states. Having a good understanding of history and culture, as Professor Ricardo mentioned, is particularly important for diplomats, since both spheres are always instrumentalized in a specific political context. Studying history can help diplomats to recognize certain thinking in the context of time and certain patterns of behavior of political actors that are developed in a specific geography. That knowledge is of great importance to diplomacy. I hope that the presentation and the discussion of this conference will meet the objectives set forward by the organizers of this conference, and that is to provide an introduction into the theoretical and practical aspects of geopolitics, and to provoke interest among the participants to further develop their knowledge of geopolitics and understand the complex power dynamics in international relations. I hope I have not overstayed my time limit.
Thank you very much. Yes, I would. Dear Ambassador Tegovski, dear Rector Boyadjiev, Minister Dimitrovski, dear organizers, thank you very much for inviting me to talk about very important issue of security. Thank you very much for recognizing security as an important topic in relation with foreign policy and geography, of course. As the last speaker in this session, I would say that I have a very easy job to do because most of you are very well informed and involved in foreign policy, some of you in geography, and I can recognize only two of you very well involved in security issues. Security is never top priority when we are talking about social, political life, but it is always important to have in mind that a huge number of institutions should deliver results to guarantee our security. Let's mention just the tragedy in Kočani 40 days ago to realize the importance of the security for all of us, where a lot of institutions could deliver and they fail. So we should always talk about security. We should relate security to all social important topics. For this presentation, I made an analysis of a national strategic, mostly security documents, and most of my topics would be related to the contemporary strategic documents of Macedonia. At the very end, I will just present some facts about our country related with the World Bank and why geography is very important for our further development. These are the national security strategic documents. Most of them are very new, some of them in 2nd or 3rd generation. But the first one is National Development Strategy. This is maybe the most important strategic document that we are still developing. There are a lot of working groups divided in 8 subgroups, most of domestic institutions, administration, NGOs, even international partners, academia are involved in bringing new decisions and bringing new way of development of our country. So this is still open process led by the government, of course, and we are trying to find the best solutions for our further development. So I choose only some topics because all the documents are similar one to other from different aspects to present to you security as a base system as possible. Trends and challenges for long-term development as recognized in this national development strategy. Demographics, one should always be very aware about demographics. Most of the countries in the region, even Europe, after the fall of communism, lose more than 10%, 8% like in Macedonia or in Serbia, to even 22% in Romania of the population that migrate to the Western Europe or other part of the world. Migration pressure. Of course, we're still in a situation of crisis on our southern and northern border in order to better answer the challenges of migration. Since 2015, even for the whole decade, we have a situation of crisis to southern and western and northern border. Climate change, education and health, energy security, previously was mentioned about our energy security and independence in energy, which is very good. Also, food supply and food safety, geopolitics, and technological changes and digital transformation. Regarding geopolitics as a trend and challenge to national security, in this very same document, we recognize that geopolitics create political and socio-economic insecurity, that geopolitical changes can manifest in new migration waves, economic challenges, disruption to global supply chains, increased cost for new loans, regional conflicts, additional political polarization, etc. And of course, geopolitical shocks, which we are facing all the time, also can contribute to opposing agendas regarding the future of the Western Balkans, which may delay our path to European Union membership. The second document is a National Security Strategy 2024 to 2029. Last year we finished the preparation of this document, and this is the third generation, for the first time a little bit different than the documents that we previously have. I choose to speak about threats that is recognized in this document. So having in mind the geopolitical and geographical position, size, level of dependence on natural resources, the degree of technological development, all those processes are very important, and it is good that we recognize all these challenges as threats in our national strategy. Second one is defense strategy from 2020. There is no direct connection between geopolitics, geography, development of the country in this strategy, but it is important to emphasize that we recognize some concerns regarding our national security, and they are economic and political problems, organized crime, hostile foreign intelligence services, radicalism and violent extremism, etc. Of course, terrorism, illegal migration, we have separate strategies for these challenges. I will speak about them now. So now we have a national security strategy for counter-terrorism and national security strategy for counter-violent extremism. These are also third generation of strategies, but for the first time we decided to split them on a separate strategies. Previously we have one national strategy regarding counter-terrorism and violent extremism, and now we have a separate strategies in order to give institutions much more space to act separately for different activities, and of course to act in common sense if it is understandable. So here we are talking about human rights and freedoms-led action, principles of good governance and fostering of democratic values, a whole of society and whole of government approach, which is implemented when preparing all these strategic documents, principle of equal opportunities for women and men, principle of the prohibition of discrimination against any person and or group of persons based on personal characteristic, principle of legality, respect the multi-ethnic and multicultural aspects of the country, and of course regional and international cooperation. These are all topics very related to the issues of security, and one should always have in mind that we can face any challenges just if we have this kind of approach, involve as much as possible institutions and as much as possible clear path of their activities. The next one is cybersecurity strategy, second generation. The first one was 2020 to 2024, and last year we bring a new strategy, 2025-2028, with 6 priority areas as strong national capacities for cybersecurity, security and resilience of essential and important entities, networks and information and communication systems, society resilient to cyber threats, minimizing the impact of incidents in cyberspace, national and international cooperation, framework for monitoring, evaluation and reporting. These are all different chapters and priority areas in security strategy. It is a very comprehensive document, involved a lot of institutions, most of them, of course, public institutions, but while preparing this strategy, we invite a lot of other professionals from academia, from private sector, etc. And the last one regarding national strategies is National Strategy for Combating Trafficking in Human Beings and Illegal Migration. And this is an institutional framework as supporting state institutions. We have a national commission, as many other national commissions, responsible to act and to create policies to answer these kind of challenges, trafficking in human beings and illegal migration. We have all other security and national capacities that are recognized in European countries, also certain offices, of course some centers that we create to answer better these, I would say, not only challenge, but possibilities to answer in a better way. Some words about security, geography, and what is important about creating our foreign policy. World Bank is an institution that follows different way of acting in the society, and when some amateur like myself in the field of geography and the foreign policy would search on internet, first report would be 2024 report of World Bank regarding Macedonian development. So the connection between security and foreign policy and geography, of course, you can find in this report of the World Bank. That's why I choose to present just briefly what are all themes and topics that are important in connection to security and foreign policy. You can read fiscal sustainability, enhancing the effectiveness of public administration, etc., and that is all topics that are connected on some way with the topics of security. Sorry. Also, some other aspects of that report of the World Bank. And finally, the speakers previously was mentioned, some of the speakers, that we have a lot of capacities. Of course, I found data that Macedonia is seventh among the 10 mountainous countries in the world, with 85.5% of our territory covered by mountains. And that was quite surprising for me, 85.5%, and we don't use it in a good manner. We should invest very much in researching and offering our mountains, even in regard of foreign policy, development of tourism, etc., etc. Of course, we are a landlocked country. What is the conclusion? I would just emphasize the last third one topic. To address its geographic vulnerabilities, Macedonia focuses on regional stability, NATO membership, and energy security. And that is all that is important for the previous topics that I delivered. Thank you very much for... Thank you.
Let me remind you, obviously, most important event recently happened here. It was the tragedy that happened in Kočani. My question is, was that easy to predict? Was that predictable? My first answer is yes, it was. Who is the one to be blamed for not being raised earlier? I am the one. But I'm afraid that there are some people, also also in this very room, who could have raised our attention to the very failure of the capacity of this society and societies around the region to predict such an event. I would like to say that, of course, that is why I took the floor. Not later than 1 year ago, about a year later than now, we should meet again to confront this very question. Whether we have capacity to predict such a tragic event, or I would like to see, or to hear if someone would like to say, no, it was not a very tragic event. It was. And I ask you and I beg you, if in your capacity, I don't know whether we win, 1 year from now, to have very similar, very successful like this meeting to answer and confront the very troublesome question I raised. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for mentioning this tragedy again, Ambassador. Actually, the basic activities of security sector and security institutions to make predictable our security. It is never possible to guarantee it in 100% that all of us could be secure, but it is important that institutions are functioning in a very good manner. That's why I mentioned that all or a huge number of institutions from different ministries, from different capacities, should have a better activities to guarantee our security. This would be a topic for next decade, probably not only next year, but we will come again 3 years after this tragedy to talk about what we have learned from this tragedy. Are we a better society now? Maybe it is too late, but for security reasons it is never too late. It is just a topic to do today, not tomorrow, today. All of us should be aware that all of us could bring a lot of quality while planning security issues. So it depends on us. Security is for me, for you, for all of us. All of us should have some kind of activities. And when the country asks for support, then we should be here to give our expertise when it is necessary. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Thanos Papazoglou. I'm from the Greek embassy, but I would like to intervene on purely my personal capacity. While I was listening to the very interesting presentations on geopolitics, I was thinking of alternative theories and ways to explain how the world functions, how the states perform, and I will take advantage of the last comment by Professor Dujovsky on the function of institutions. And of course, there are many tools we can use to interpret phenomena in politics and international relations. And as a professor taught me as a student, we should be pluralists in using the appropriate tool according to the case we examine. So my question is, to what extent do you believe that geopolitics can provide answers compared to other theories, as the one by Nobel laureate Acemoglu, on institutional capacity of the states, which is a critical factor for their success? You know, the book Why Nations Fail, who takes as example very proximate locations, who perform completely differently, and comes up with a conclusion that it's the institutions and the openness of the institutions that gives incentives to people, businesses, institutions to perform better, and how, and also keeping in mind the strategic goal of European integration, how these, whether despite what happens in the world, we should stay focused on institution building, on achieving strong institutions everywhere, not only this country, but in my home country, in the European Union.
Geopolitics, you can never rely only on geopolitics, because very often geopolitics create self-fulfilling prophecies. So that's, you are embedded just with one approach. And so sometimes geopolitics enhance aggressivity and confrontational posture. So I do agree with you, but I should be diplomatic or can be straightforward. I mean, that's, you decide, and my second part of the answer will be accordingly. You decide. Diplomatic answer or straightforward answer? Straightforward. Yes.
Straightforwardly diplomatic.
Degree. So we can rely on geopolitics, but for sure, in this region is rather clear that geography is about power, because for North Macedonia, the fundamental focus is to enter inside, since it's a small and locked country in an always troublesome region, is to enter NATO, but it's important, fundamental to enter the European Union. And in order to that, and there was, it's clear that North Macedonia has not the power to shape his own geography perception, but his geographical perception has been decided by other geographical actors who had a veto power to, towards. So that's a demonstration that geopolitics is the right when you say that geography does not exist, but exists only in relation to power mechanism. And that's why we use the word North Macedonia. I don't know if there's a bit diplomatic.
Okay. Yes. And we have the time for one short final question for this session, if anyone would like. If no one short comment, please.
Just to briefly say, Serbian Minister of Foreign Affairs Ivica Dačić declared not geography. The problem is this region is history. It's still too much history and too much borders. Yes.
I would like to welcome you all to our second part of our conference. My name is Venera Krliu. I'm the Vice Rector for Education at the University American College Skopje. Today I have the pleasure to announce our guest speakers, Professor Romaniuk, a research fellow from Convenus University of Budapest, Hungary. Professor Goran Kitovski from the Institute of Geography at the National Faculty of National Sciences and Mathematics, and Professor Dancho Markovski, our professor from the School of Political Science at the University American College. I think I would like to give the word to Professor Romaniuk. Please.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, and to all of the guests for helping to make this happen and for inviting me here to this absolutely amazing country. This is my first time in Macedonia, and it's truly spectacular for me, so I'm very much appreciative. And also to represent Corvinus University of Budapest and by extension, Hungary. So,
Is this your presentation?
this is not.
Okay. Which one is yours?
Yeah, this second one, Romaniuk. Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, just the microphone is not turned on.
Yo, I guess this makes a difference. Okay. So today, today I will be discussing, I've been given the very simple task of discussing geography, geopolitics, and foreign policy in 15 minutes. So thank you very much for this challenge. I appreciate it. First, I just want to say that Mr. Goravska, you summarized geopolitics absolutely brilliantly. I was very, very much impressed. Mr. Dimitrovsky raised some very important points about corridors, landlockedness, and Professor Redeli, you were very, very brilliant in bringing up power. This is essential. I myself am a product of hybridity, ethnically and in other ways. By no means does my perception of geography afford itself a higher level or advantage of understanding geopolitics amongst others. However, for this discussion and intervention, please embrace the idea that geography is everything and a determinant of power. Sorry to step on toes, but just for the sake of this talk. So 200 years ago, Napoleon made a statement. He opined that to know a nation's geography is to know everything about its foreign policy and its behavior and its intentions. And I maintain that geography is crucial to understanding geopolitical realities. Whether we talk about anything that falls within geopolitics, we can take an example the example of cybersecurity, artificial intelligence. Is this an aspect of critical geopolitics or something intangible and thus discursive or beyond the realm of pure geography? I would say no, because the cables, the metal, the fuel, everything that is required to lay the cables and to develop the systems that allow this are materialistic, they're material. So they're coming from geography, from somewhere. We can point to many examples that attest to this. And knowing geopolitical realities is essential to understanding states' capabilities, their capacities, distinguished from capabilities, their options, and their potential interests and potential behavior on top of that. Based on geographical locations, states will pursue widely different foreign policy options and strategies. We've seen this, we know this. Some states are afforded better positions geographically than others. And while geography and geopolitics helps us to understand state strategies are reflective of the former too. So I believe that this is, there's a co-constitutive relationship involved in power and geography, geopolitics and geography, but for the sake of this discussion, I would ask to embrace geography being virtually everything. We can take an example of the United States. United States arguably has one of the, from geographical point of view, the best geographical position in the world. It has a harmless, defenseless, friendly Canada to the north. It has a completely militarily useless Mexico to the south. It has a brilliant Atlantic Ocean that cannot be traversed to the east, has an absolutely expansive Pacific Ocean that can't be traversed to the west. This is an absolutely amazing geographical position. But geography, while having non-limits, also has limits. And America's geographical limits lie somewhere in the world eventually. And we can talk about the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandab Strait. Somewhere, at some point in the world, the United States materials have to come from somewhere. Recently, the United States has embarked down potentially harmful for all states and dangerous path of trade conflict, so-called trade war. In response to these assertive measures under the second Trump administration, the administration of Xi Jinping and the PRC responded with simply, find your rare earth elements somewhere else, but not from our country. This put the United States in a very difficult position. Fortunately, the US has been endowed with a very strong, resource-rich California, which was just recently identified as having quite a few rare earth minerals. So this is good for the United States. However, the unintended consequences of the so-called trade war showed the limitations of America's geography and exceptional geographical position, and by extension, its geopolitics and its power. I like to always include maps in presentations. It usually dominates all of my lectures in school. While everybody in high school was out playing football and ice hockey, I was sitting in the library looking at atlases as if they were comic books and reading them over and over and over. I think they're absolutely essential, as Ms. Zaglavska told us, to assess the relations that exist between states in terms of geography, to help us see geography from different angles and thereby help us to see relations very differently. By altering the optics, which our guest mentioned, of a country's geography and geographical geopolitical outlook, then it helps us to potentially understand, we hope that it helps us to understand both the state and its interests very differently. So turning a map upside down, for instance, helps us, first of all, it challenges us to understand what it is we're looking at visually, because it doesn't make sense anymore. But looking at an Indo-Pacific centric map changes our perceptions of the world as well, rather than a North American centric, which is usually the case. Taking old World War II maps and looking at Western Europe from the perspective of Moscow radically changes the way we see the world, the periphery around us as the Russian, as a Soviet state. And this fundamentally alters our optics and raises some very interesting questions about our ontological positions as states. If states were people, people are states. We have very much similar characteristics. I always like to relate these two in the classroom for students, that states and people are absolutely the same. Some of the key geopolitical factors that influence the state's foreign policy, not deterministic, but influence it, have been noted as being size, its specific geographic location or position, if you want to call it this, its border and terrain, not only control of critical resources, but the need for critical resources and its access to those resources. I mentioned rare earth elements and America's need to begin looking around the world for different sources for rare earths, particularly with the ascendance of electric vehicles, smartphone manufacturing, laptops, etc., and all sorts of digital materials that are going to require resources that, once again, raise geopolitical competition in old ways and new ways. A return to the African continent, for example, scrambling for resources that can't be found elsewhere. Access to waterways are extremely important, and we'll show a few points about this. Proximity to other states and regions, and then moving a little bit out of the classical geopolitics, although that's usually where I'm situated in my analysis. But again, as I mentioned, I'm a hybrid, and so I don't like to subscribe to any one point of view. Population, religion, culture, these are very important and essentialistic elements of geography because they are, by extension, emblematic of power of these countries. So let me make a few comments here about small states, and pointing to one in particular, two factors in particular, size and location. In a sense, size is everything. In a sense, size is meaningless. Location is everything, but at the same time, location can be meaningless as well, context dependent. So people usually make the mistake of small states as entities that don't carry much significance in the world or in world affairs, as larger states do. This is very much a misreading about geography. Macedonia is virtually a pinhead of a country, in a sense, on a map. Its size is very insignificant compared to the People's Republic of China. On a daily basis, for the country of Macedonia to run, it's consuming approximately 20,000 barrels of oil. Whereas in 2016, the PRC was consuming 12 million barrels a day, which has been elevated to around 16 million barrels a day as of 2023, just for the state to operate its daily operational costs and feed itself to survive. Again, as a state is much like a person, a human being needs a certain number of calories per day just to live. And this is the basic caloric oil intake of the People's Republic of China on a daily basis just to survive. That's not counting and factoring in its ambitions to develop the strongest military, the strongest air force, the most modern navy, and run numerous military drills around Taiwan and so on. Small states with a so-called good location with strategic resources or unique geographical locations can hold distinct and immense advantages. This is true over larger countries. Small states therefore have the potential to make deep impacts on world politics. We saw this in beginning of the 1990s when Iraq decided to invade Kuwait and challenge vital oil supplies. The Middle East countries are strong examples of this as oil-rich, endowed states and monarchies. Despite their size relative to larger countries, oil wealth is the lifeblood of every national economy on Earth, and irrespective of the PRC's ambitions, for instance, and the United States' interests around the world, its oil dependency, both of them, their oil dependency will always be deterministic of their abilities to project force and determine their geopolitical aspirations and foreign policies. Another example that receives virtually no attention in policy or academia is the Tibetan Plateau inside the PRC. As I mentioned, size and location are very important. Location is of immense importance. There are numerous major rivers running through South Asia, East Asia, and Southeast Asia. Most specifically, Nepal, as a case of a small country, can be likened to the Tibetan Plateau. But virtually every single river that flows through South Asia, Southeast, and East Asia originates from the Tibetan Plateau, from a contested region inside the PRC that is not cannot ethnically be likened to the Chinese population, to the Han ethnicity. In one sense, to say it diplomatically, is arguably occupied from one point of view. So this means that the Tibetan Plateau is the life source, the lifeblood, the water security for the most populated region on the entire planet. The same goes for Nepal, which holds the lifeblood for tens of millions of Indians and Bangladeshi people in West Bengal and Bangladesh, just running off of the Bay of Bengal. So I'd like to mention that there are four important factors impacting states, specifically landlocked states like Nepal is, and Tibet, which is not specifically a state. The first would be the so-called inferior geographical location, which isn't always inferior. The second is the shelter belt, or so-called buffer states. Third is fewer foreign policy options, which in a sense offers states unique foreign policy options. And the fourth is weak national power and weak bargaining power. But the calculus of bargaining power can also be interpreted in different ways depending on the location of the state. Lastly, I'd like to mention choke points, because as I started off speaking, the United States has been given or found itself with one of the best geographies, if not the best geographies, of all nations in the world. However, at some point, its limitations are challenged. And choke points have also received virtually no coverage or attention in policy making. No Indo-Pacific strategy, for example, of states cover choke points, as far as I know, as far as I've read. And very few sound, strong academic articles cover choke points in their analyses. Why are choke points so critical? There are approximately 7 key or 8 key choke points around the world that determine all trade around this planet that all countries depend on. In 2003, Hu Jintao coined the term the Malacca dilemma. Now, Macedonia is landlocked and tiny. The PRC is very large, but and has thousands of kilometers of coastline. But the PRC is also, let's say, in a sense, handicapped by 1.7 billion people, which is a very different population size than Macedonia. Despite having thousands of kilometers of shoreline, the PRC is also surrounded by choke points, virtually all choke points. And the Malacca dilemma emphasizes this between Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, through which approximately 85% of all of the PRC's oil supplies flow. A second very important choke point to mention is the one circled on the map, the Bab el-Mandab, the strait referred to Bab el-Mandab, or in Arabic, the Gate of Tears. To the north is Yemen, a country that's been in civil war and conflict for many years. And the emergence of the Houthi, Ansar Allah, the Houthi movement, has in itself, while having around 17,000 or so militants or soldiers, doesn't exactly have a lot of global reach. However, it does find itself in a very unique position. It is situated just off of the coast of, or the location of Bab el-Mandab, through which most of the world's commercial shipping and supplies move through. Since 2003, late 2003, we've seen many attacks on international shipping, commercial shipping, which has forced commercial shipping to reroute around the Cape of Good Hope, raising shipping costs by 400, 500, 600%, and seriously challenging the security of global supply chains. In this sense, the geography of Ansar Allah in Yemen has given it immense geopolitical options and power. More power and geopolitical options than it seems that even the United States has at its disposal to respond to it, which has seemed to be so far a failure. So since I've nearly violated my time here, I just wrap up. Geography matters almost more than anything else, but I do not want to subscribe to the fact that, or the idea that it's the most important. States and their policies are products of geography. That's true. Understanding their own and that of other states, to be more precise, which absolutely fundamentally shapes human discourses, actions, and behaviors, should be understood, not just in the academic literature, but in the policy-making circles as well. And the influence of geography and geopolitical settings on international power relations, I would say, is so impactful and so pervasive that there is virtually no escape from it. And that even small and relatively powerless states and non-state actors, like the Houthi movement, can have tremendous impact on world affairs. So it seems that since 200 years ago, 100 years ago, and today, geopolitics, geography, and foreign policy have been resurrected and once again come to dominate the state of world affairs. So it would be absolutely critical to bring this back to the center of foreign policy making and understand it in ways, because it's affecting everything that we do in the world in profound ways on a daily basis. So thank you very much for your attention.
And I'm gonna try to be in the frame of 15 minutes or less. It's a challenge, but I will try to my best to be brief, and I will try to speak for everything but geography today, and to explain where is North Macedonia or Macedonia, because if we speak where is Macedonia, if we see the map, you can assume that it's European country or Balkan country also, but one can argue that it's not, the Balkan Peninsula per se doesn't exist as a geographic region, because it doesn't complement with the criteria. But also it's not a European. What is Europe? One can argue. So we can talk that the geography is a discipline that talks about time and space also, and it's a discipline of changes. And I will try to point some key points through a couple of examples that coincidentally are connected with the town of Ohrid in Macedonia. Maybe you know that there is a remarkable deed from Oscar Wilde called Decay of Lying. In one of the dialogues there is a point, one of the persons says, life imitates art, and have that in mind. Once our faculty, our institute hold a conference, scientific conference, and a couple of the guests, it was held in Ohrid last year. And I, as a Ohridian, I was born and raised in Ohrid, said that I can show them my hometown as a touristic #1 place in this country. And we took the route to the old town of Ohrid, the most remarkable place maybe in Macedonia. And I showed them the memorial house of Grigor Perlichev, maybe the most brilliant key figure of Macedonian historiography in literature. And I told them that he, in his autobiography, remarkable deed also, is writing that he was raised in a poor family, in a poor neighborhood. And his house is now is in the old town of Ohrid. 200 years later, contemporary time, square meter in the old town of Ohrid is several thousand euros. So it's not poor anymore, the neighborhood. What happens in the meanwhile? We have another resource called the view. Back then, the view on the Ohrid Lake wasn't that much important because of the terrain. The poor people lived in the high terrain of Ohrid. Now it's reversible. So The point was that when we talk about politics and everything connected to the politics, we don't have to rush into things because geography changed. Location haven't changed, but the geography and the perception of geography and the other values changed. There is a process that I call it informal Aryanization of Macedonia, and it's also connected to Ohrid. Football as a sport is one of the most cherished things in Macedonia. In the world as a secondary thing, but in Macedonia also it's the most popular sport. And there is a football player, a striker, who is playing for Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League. His name is Dejan Kulusevski. He is a Swedish representative, but he is from Ohrid. Most of his family lives in Ohrid still. He is Swedish, but he is Macedonian-born player. English Premier League from the independence was broadcasted on couple of mediums in Macedonia, mainly on the state-based Macedonian television, but as the value of the premiership grew, small economies as Macedonia cannot afford to bought off the rights for the broadcast, so there has to be another broadcaster who can afford that. Right now it's the Arena. Don't get me wrong, I think it's Serbia-based, and I'm gonna get to the point. The vast majority of Macedonian younger population, especially when they watch football, the Premiership, when they watch the Tottenham Hotspur play, and they see the excellent player Dejan Kulusevski play, they called him and they know him by the name Dejan Kulusevski because the Serbian commentator calls him that. He is Ohrid-born Macedonian, but the second name we know him by the second name, by the Serbian version of the name. The point is that small states, even though the landlocked small states as Macedonia, and in a complicated neighborhood, they can survive, but it's a struggle to survive in a globalized world. So we have to stay on the topic of European Union path. I always call it the path into the outdoor because European Union also changes. If you read the Matthew Nimitz paper, which was written after the Prespa agreement, he said that he told Macedonians that if we don't rush to solve the problem with Greece, we may see another different European Union in the future. So we are seeing another European Union today. Let's not forget that we are Balkan state, we are European state, but even though I believe in Europe and the values in the European single market, I don't believe in one Europe as a cultural being, because have in mind that Macedonia as a terrain, as a geographic place, was a part of a political order and a political system 1,000 years with places like Cairo, Aleppo, Istanbul, but 0 years, for example, with Vienna, Brussels, or other European states. So they have to give us a break for our European path. It must continue, but on a more careful steps forward, because when we talk about Macedonian foreign policy, it's always trapped like between a hammer and the anvil in between the agreements. We had Ohrid Framework Agreement. The next step was to enter Brussels through Athens. We got the Prespa Agreement, and if I can joke a little bit, the first agreement, Ohrid Framework Agreement, was more like namely based on an Ohrid Lake, the Prespa Agreement on the Prespa Lake. Now we have one lake, tectonic lake available, that's a Doiran Lake. Maybe it's reserved for another agreement that will secure us the way out or the way in, because we are Balkan state, but that Balkan does not exist. Excuse me. We are Western Balkans. It's a designation for countries that are struggling to get to be European, and it's a shrinking concept. We are trying to get away from the Western Balkans to be in a great European Union. So I don't have a punchline, I have a throat problem. I don't. So as a conclusion, we must pursue our European path, but with a careful and diplomatic steps ahead. I think I was short because when I teach geography, I spend the time more than 45 minutes or less than 10. It's not nothing in between. So thank you very much for listening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I will direct my presentation on the importance of geography in the shaping of foreign policy and national security from the perspective of small states, including the Republic of North Macedonia and their participation in this perfectly chaotic world. A world in which geopolitical interests, the creation of interesting spheres, and unfortunately, the further application of the policy of realism in the relations of great powers towards small states. To begin with, let us recall the concept of a small state. Unlikely clearly established criteria that are given when defining large states in the scientific theory of international relations, there is no generally accepted definition by which a small or medium-sized states are determined. The reason for this should be sought in inadequacy of the criteria, their type and quantity, according to which the definition would be fully determined. So in literature, we find different studies that takes the area, the number of population, the geographical position, the economic potential, up to the process of globalization, which outlines the definition of small states in order from the science of size to the focus of acumen or innovation, the aspects that affect the later to determine the right side of the states. At the same time, political geography as a scientific discipline of the science of geography often takes into account the surface of the country. The disciplines of sciences other than geography, which deal with this issue, such as international relations, international economics, etc., take the number of population and the area as a criteria creation according to which a country could be considered small. So according to this criteria, today we have a total of 73 countries in the world, or more than a third of all countries with a territory smaller than 60,000 square kilometers. The situation is similar with the number of population, with the number of 4 million being taken as an upper limit. This group of countries also includes Macedonia with its area of 25,713 square kilometers and population of 1,836,000. In practice, the size of the territory, the number of population, human capital, military capacities, economic resources, and geographical location, which are taken as elements present in theory, cannot represent a decisive or final factor that will fundamentally determine the status of the state. In the determination, it is of particular importance to take into account the following elements. First, the size of the state or the number of population is not significant for its admissions to as a member of United Nations or any other international organization. Secondly, the principle of equality applies to all members of organization. Thirdly, the example of Nordic countries and the Vatican, which truly have great influence and respect on the international political scene, is clear indication that the state does not have to have military power to influence the world affairs. And fourth, democratization in the international relations, the application of international law, especially in the area of sovereignty and territorial integrity, regional and military cooperation, and membership of small and medium-sized states in various international organizations significantly improves their position that they had to for more than a century. From here, the conclusion emerged that before small states there is the challenge of conducting an active foreign policy in a way and with means that will enable them to achieve their goals and interests in relations with other states. This implies the inclusion of several elements, including the internal politics of the state, membership in international organizations, regional military or economic alliances, international economic engagement, administrative capacity, and even the visionary attitude of the ruling structure that conduct the state's foreign policy. In general, the foreign policy goals of state can be grouped as follows, and this is very important even for our country. Protection of territorial integrity and sovereignty, protection of the interests of its citizens, both at home and abroad, development of relations with other state and international organizations in order to achieve its interests, building good relations with immediate neighbors in order to strengthen its national security and safety for its citizens, realization of international economic, cultural, and scientific cooperation, promoting national and other values, and expanding its influence. It is important to know that each of these, of the stated goals, leaves a strong mark on achievement or non-achievement of foreign policy. The mood of the public, technology, national capacities on which military power, technological progress, and economic development depend, political organization, foreign policy decisions are faster. We must know that faster in an autocratic system than in democratic systems, political responsibility, and state leadership. The second category, which I want to point as a factors that influence the position of the state in the international community, is international relation as dynamic process that stimulate or prevent the affirmation of foreign policy of a particular country. A glaring example of this is Macedonia in the past 3 decades. The division of internal and external factors, among other things, represent their national or international characteristics, but this in no way means that they are not closely correlated with each other. Foreign policy is most often a mirror or reflection of the current internal political equilibrium in the state. This unity between political forces, the parties in power or in opposition, around strategic foreign policy goals most often results in negative results and harm to the interests of the state and vice versa. And allow me to quote Slovenian ambassador Ernest Petric, who said regarding the necessary national unity, he emphasized, I quote, if a country is unable to reach a consensus on important foreign policy decisions, it will not be able to live up to its responsibilities. In small countries, in particular, disunity and wrong strategic foreign policy decisions can lead foreign policy to defeat, while in international crisis situations, they can greatly endanger the security and existence of the state. Wrong strategic decisions and internal disunity are harmful for any countries, but for the small states, it can be fatal. Therefore, the survival of small states in the international community should be based on national unity for the most important foreign policy goals, a long-term strategy accepted and respected by political factors, and building a society of satisfied citizens. In this way, national security is ensured and it is easier to deal with external threats. Dissatisfaction among the population of an economic, legal, administrative, and other nature will not and cannot produce the necessary patriotism. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Markowski. I would like to invite the audience for some questions and additional comments.
Macedonian geography and geopolitics as well. If we analyze Macedonia geographically, like the Professor Driosti said, we are in the top 10 mountainous countries. In this group also is Bhutan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Armenia, Nepal, and Lesotho, I think. Switzerland and Montenegro. If we analyze these countries, they are very similar geographically. Most of them are similar geopolitically as well. All the countries are poor, poorer than the rest of the world. We have similar problems internally. Only one country is different from this group, and that's Switzerland. How do you perceive that Switzerland use its geography, translate it into foreign policy for its own benefit? We know what can we learn from the Switzerland success and translate it into Macedonian conditions for our benefit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. 2 points come to mind in explaining this position, which would not be unlike that of Kolov mentioned Liechtenstein and Luxembourg also. Switzerland's unique position is not just based on geography, but the geography and the internal politics and external politics of its neighbors. And from that, we can extract that Switzerland is surrounded by stable states. And this is very important. Strong, stable states with strong economies that conduct their external diplomacy in very positive, very diplomatic, very friendly, agreeable ways. And this makes a very big difference when we're surrounded by stable and strong states, unlike states like Mali or Chad, for example, or Central Asian republics that aren't surrounded by stable states. This is deterministic. And the second point is related to what I mentioned first, is that the diplomacy of Switzerland is such that it allows for an embracive of positive relationships with the states that have access to seas, who have access to ports. And this is very important. This is very important for the prosperity or the small landlocked country with virtually no or very little farmland on a very mountainous country, at least comparatively speaking. why this matters is that in spite of the several groundbreaking conferences and treaties that happened in the 20th century, mid 20th century, that that set it established in international law that all states, even landlocked states, do under international law have access to maritime ports and seas. Treaty-wise and in terms of international law, yes, this has been established, but this has not always been observed. And states can, at least pragmatically speaking, cut off access to seas. This is not the case for Switzerland because of the way it conducts its diplomacy with those states that are next to it. And because of those states that surrounded are also prosperous, they conduct their diplomacy in the same way. These are two important factors that allow for it to experience the prosperity that it does, at least in my opinion. So the geography is definitely linked with its geopolitics and its foreign policy, but the surrounding features, state-wise of this is like very, very important to consider. I hope this makes you better by it.
Thank you. Just concerning Switzerland, there is a peculiar characteristic from an ethnic and cultural point of view. But instead of being afraid, Switzerland escaped the trap of having a majority and minorities in building up his identity on a pluralistic identity, ethnic identity. And that was important because he could avoid the trap of neighboring countries exploiting the presence of minorities. Instead, if you go to Switzerland, they are, I live in very near to Switzerland. I consider myself half Swiss. And if you go to the Italian Swiss, they consider themselves Swiss. They are Italian. They speak Italian. They speak a terrible Italian dialect. They are Italians, but they are truly Swiss. So instead of being afraid of ethnic minorities, the identity minorities, they build up a different and almost unique country focused on that. But no suggestion, hint in my answer.
If I can build on that, I'm not a physical geographer, I'm far away from physical geography, but I have a working knowledge of physical geography. So when we talk about mountainous countries, it is correct that Macedonia and Bosnia and Herzegovina are the most mountainous countries in the Europe, but bear in mind the criteria of mountainous country. The main criteria is to form the shape of the terrain is to be 500 meters above the sea level. And the next additional criteria is to have a morphoplastic shape as a mountain. For example, to understand what I'm talking about, if you are traveling in the Barbara Valley, in which you are going to Macedonia towards Greece, on the both sides of the highway, you can see mountains. One is called Blausch, that looks like a Mount Everest. It's only 900 meters of height. Ohrid, for example, I gave Ohrid. Only the lake Ohrid lies 700 meters of height. And when you see the Lishca mountain, which is 2.2 kilometers wide, you see it as a hill only, as a high mountain. So on a percentage basis, yes, we are a mountainous country, but we cannot compare Macedonia to Tajikistan, for example, because our highest mountain is not even 3 kilometers, and Tajikistan or Bolivia, currently, is 4 or 5 kilometers on the sea level in average. I mean, they exaggerate a bit, but you get the point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, thank you all for the fruitful discussions. Thank you for attending the conference, the insights, such important topics. I believe to have such events in the future Professor Dodowski, thank you for the initiative for the conference together with the diplomatic club. Yes. Thank you, UACS team, for the organization. And I wish you a pleasant afternoon.
Thank